After the success of the Justice League, along came this excellent and brilliant follow-up, Justice League Unlimited. The core members of the Justice League: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern John Stewart, and Martian Manhunter. They have now expanded the League and have added an army of heroes to the group, hence the term Unlimited, as it doesn't have a set number of heroes. The show begins following the events of the three-part story Star-Crossed, which saw the invasion of the Thanagarians and Hawkgirl's betrayal, then redemption, and then removal or resignation from the League. The League has been rebuilt and expanded into an even larger group to cover the whole planet and other planets within their sector. Now, the show ran for 3 seasons, and more so specifically for season 2, it was a season-long story arc, which I will get into in a bit. Season 1 focused on introducing new characters into the League. And the good thing about this concept is that it was giving more popularity and credence to characters that had largely been in the shadows of the main DC characters, and outside of the comic books, they were largely unknown. Hawk and Dove, Booster Gold, The Question, The Atom, Dr. Fate, Black Canary, Vixen, Captain Atom, and Shazam. These were just some of the new characters seen in this series. Then there were other more well-known characters that were given way more emphasis in this show. Green Arrow had been an established DC character in the comic books dating all the way back to 1941, where he made his debut in More Fun Comics number 73. He had made many appearances over the decades, but he wasn't featured as much on TV. Now, this show, JLU, along with Smallville and Arrow, really helped establish Green Arrow as a mainstream hero. It was fitting that he was the very first hero to appear in the first episode Initiation and demonstrate his importance as a hero, and after initially rejecting the League, he accepts their invitation, and he would go on to make a few more appearances as the series carried on. Supergirl, fresh from her appearances on Superman the Animated Series, gets her fair share of stories in this show, and she is a key ingredient in the main plot of Season 2. In the episode Fearful Symmetry, it's discovered that a clone of her known as Galatea has been created, and is a fully grown, matured, powerful, evil version of her. She also goes on her first mission as a League member in the first episode Initiation, alongside Green Arrow, Green Lantern John Stewart, and Captain Atom. Supergirl and Green Arrow are 2 characters that really got highlighted and grew in popularity from this show. The characters would go on to not only feature in Smallville, but they would go on to have their own individual series on the CW. I also credit Justice League Unlimited with carrying on with their story arcs. Season 2 for me is where it really gets good. There is a conspiracy created by tech industry giants Cadmus, with Amanda Waller and Lex Luthor the masterminds behind it. The League has been deemed too powerful with all their superpowered beings, so a plan is concocted to frame them and show them as a threat to humanity, while secretly Cadmus are creating their own super army to take on the League. I already mentioned Supergirl's clone, Galatea. Cadmus has also created an army of superpowered beings known as the Ultimen. The Ultimen make their first appearance in the episode Ultimatum, and they appear to be the good guys, but are really lab experiments with a short lifespan. Learning of this, they attack the Justice League and are ultimately beaten, except for one of them, Longshot, who ends up joining the League. As Season 2 unfolds, the Ultimen in their hundreds make their return, only these are mindless clones programmed only to destroy the League. Just prior to these events, the Question is trying to put all the pieces together about the League, and it's been perpetrated by Cadmus, and attempts to kill Lex Luthor, as he believes Superman could be forced into killing Lex, and there could be a repeat of the events of A Better World back in Season 2. Captain Atom is forced to turn on the League as he is a member of the Marine Corps on the orders of General Eiling, who is in on the whole plot to take out the League. There is an incident staged between Superman and Shazam, who end up fighting after Lex Luthor manipulates Superman into mistrusting Shazam after he endorses his campaign to become the President of the United States. All of these events build up during the course of Season 2, and with ties to previous episodes of Justice League, as well as Superman the Animated Series, it climaxes in a brilliant 4-story arc, which ultimately reveals Lex Luthor's plan to take out the League, with Amanda Waller then having a change of heart and then turning on Lex and attempts to bring him down. The original 7 members of the League come together for the first time this season and attempt to take down Lex, who has been fused with the alien Brainiac, who had implanted himself into Lex and steadily grew within him, and that gave super strength and cured him of his life-threatening disease. In addition, Supergirl and Galatea fight in a battle to the death. All of these events were built up very nicely, and the payoff was just excellent. The storytelling was very well done over the course of Justice League Unlimited, and became even more mature than previous Bruce Timm animated shows. A point worth noting is that unlike previously with Justice League, where there were episodes with 2-parters, this time around in Unlimited, several of the episodes were singular and self-contained. You did have the odd 2-parters here, like the Once and Future Thing featuring Terry McGinnis' Batman, as well as the aforementioned 4-story arc in Season 2. I did think that the whole JLU series could have been Seasons 3 to 5 of Justice League, but given the vast amount of new characters added, you can see why it was its own spin-off series. There is both good and bad to come from this concept. The good is all the new characters from the wider DC universe brought in to further expand the DC animated universe. And the bad? Well, the core 7 characters from Justice League don't feature as much, and they tended to mix and match with other DC characters, and the original 7 only came together a very small handful of times. However, when that did happen, it gave it a big time feel. Now, despite its success, I would have preferred the show was split into 2, with one show focusing on the core 7, and the other focusing on other DC characters with the occasional crossover. Something more accustomed to what was seen in the Arrowverse shows, with their individual shows focusing on their own adventures, whilst coming together for the big crossovers. Now when I think about it, it really would have been an excellent idea. There are characters like Hawk and Dove, Booster Gold, that I didn't particularly care for. They could have easily inserted Cyborg or Plastic Man. Given their prominence in the comics, it was somewhat disappointing that none of them appeared during JLU's full run. There were dynamics, character developments, and story arcs during the show's run that interested me. One was the dynamic between Batman and Wonder Woman. It was a will they, won't they. She was into him, but he resisted because, well, he's Batman, and his love life has a complicated history. They did have a hookup in the comic books. The Hawk Girl Green Lantern relationship carried on into Justice League Unlimited. Even though they had split up and Green Lantern was now in a relationship with Vixen, there were still feelings for Hawk Girl, and this was highlighted in 3 specific episodes. The first one, the Once and Future Thing, Green Lantern meets his future son Warhawk, Rex Stewart, and it's clearly obvious who the mother is. Once the mission ended, both Hawk Girl and Green Lantern shared an awkward look towards each other, hinting there was still more to come from this relationship. The next episode was Hunter's Moon, when along with Vigilante, Hawkgirl and Vixen are teaming up and they have to fend off an ambush from renegade Thanagarians who are seeking revenge for Hawkgirl's betrayal. At the end, Vixen and Shaira, Hawkgirl, both declare a friendly truce, and they will let things play out as to whom Green Lantern would eventually end up with. And that brings us to the 3rd episode, Shadow of the Hawk, when an archaeologist, Carter Hall, approaches Hawkgirl and tells her that he is the reincarnated spirit of her husband, and that they are destined to be together, and this is much to Green Lantern's distrust. Along with Hawkgirl, they are both captured by the Shadow Thief, who is Carter's dark side, and he shows them the love triangle between the 3. After the ensuing battle, the 2 address their feelings, but Lantern decides that he's going to stay with Vixen. Now, as the show ended after 3 seasons, it's left to the imagination as to whether or not Lantern stayed with Vixen, or he got back together with Hawkgirl. Superman in this series really showed his flawed side, which added a layer to his character that didn't make him the goody two-shoes that he was always depicted as. Now, after a fight with Doomsday, He, along with the other Leaguers, banishes him to the Phantom Zone, but it's done in a way that's a little too similar to his evil counterparts from the Justice Lords. Then there was his huge fight with Shazam that came about due to manipulation by Lex Luthor. Even though he came to his senses, just the way the fight happened and how easy it was to get under Superman's skin, it really showed his human side, so to speak, and with the right set of circumstances it was easy to get him riled up, which in turn saw him cause havoc. Lex Luthor as a villain I felt was at his most despicable during this show's run. Even though he had no superpowers, he was still a formidable foe for the League, and the whole Season 2 Cadmus arc storyline attempting to discredit the League was expertly done. The whole merger with Brainiac and taking on the League but eventually losing highlighted his stock as a top villain. The final season showcased some of his best moments on the show, escaping prison in Season 3 Episode 1, and then being brought into Gorilla Grodd's society, and then eventually kicking him out and taking over. His mind swap with the Flash and him causing havoc at JL headquarters had a nod to Smallville, where Michael Rosenbaum, who plays Lex Luthor on the show, was now speaking as Lex, as he's now in the mind of the Flash. His relentless pursuit of restoring Brainiac and then accidentally freeing Darkseid, and then making amends by getting hold of the one power that Darkseid was seeking, the anti-lab equation. This sees both villains disappear into the abyss, and that brings the season to an end. An excellent example of a character arc and growth for a specific character, with Lex Luthor highlighted perfectly here. The show was created by the brains behind Batman the Animated Series, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini. They were joined by both James Tucker and the late great Dwayne McDuffie. Together they put together an excellent masterpiece of a show. At its core it was good versus evil, but with very well written storylines that painted several shades of grey, and added several layers to the characters which made the stories that much more intriguing. Given the unbridled success of Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series, and then the first Justice League series, this show was never going to fall below standards. In fact, the success of this show served as a blueprint, I feel, for future animated DC movies, especially the ones that featured the Justice League. The legendary Andrea Romano picks up from where she left off and continues to superbly direct the voice actors in this series, and given the quality of the performances, it really came as no surprise. Carl Lumley, Susan Eisenberg, Maria Canals, Phil Lamar, Michael Rosenbaum, George Newbern, and Kevin Conroy, all 7 voice actors from Justice League, return. The show had a ton of special guest stars that appeared throughout the show's run.
Yeah, have the car ready in 20 minutes. And get all the division heads in for the meeting an hour early.
This is the real troublemaker for us. It's pure wild goose chase. Look, I will prove it. I will show you what is in there.
Go ahead, Jean. I'm already finished with the crossword.
Let me give you a hint. You want to try holding your breath as long as you can.
Not going to argue about it, Boo. You're taking me out to dinner tonight. I'm in the mood for Chinese.
You also made a commitment to the service, Captain. Seems to me you've got a decision to make.
Which leaves the rest of our evening tantalizingly free. It's a start.
The cases break open, and what's left of the Flash is buried alive in phony barf. And then everything explodes!
As I mentioned earlier in the video, I wish that the show had been split into 2, focusing on the originals and the newcomers. Justice League Unlimited lasted only 3 seasons, and I felt there were still so many more stories that could have been told. A lot of villains that appear in Justice League Unlimited are largely Superman villains. The Joker appeared in Justice League, but not here, and given the great story arc Lex Luthor had, Bruce Timm and co could have surely created one for the Joker. It would have been nice to have seen more of Flash's villains, with the Reverse Flash my main choice. Yes, we did get Gorilla Grodd, but Reverse Flash in this universe would have been an absolutely epic villain. Sinestro does appear, but he's more in the background, and given his origins and how powerful he is, having him depicted as a more serious threat in this show would have been a great idea. I feel anyway. Having a second Justice League show with new characters would have been a good thing, if only to feature and focus on characters like Supergirl, Green Arrow, and so on. A lot of these are just my personal preferences and in no way diminishes my thoughts on the show. It was an absolutely fantastic show, but it just left me wanting more. The voice actors themselves, with Susan Eisenberg, have led the calls for the show to come back. Fan support brought back Young Justice, so why not? Sadly, those calls have not been answered, and so a Justice League reunion looks very moot at this point in time. There was the Justice League vs. Fatal 5 animated movie, which saw 3 of the Justice League members return, along with their respective voice actors. It wasn't quite the same, as the other 4 voice actors weren't there, but was a small glimpse as to how it could feel if a reunion show ever happened, right down to the very drawings. So Bruce Timm, come on, you have the power to make this happen. We need a Justice League reunion. The success of both Justice League and Justice League Unlimited opened the floodgates and went on to inspire other DC hero animated shows and movies like Young Justice, Static Shock, and all the DC 52 animated universe movies. What is the legacy of Justice League Unlimited? It was an animated show that brought together DC's finest, and not just from its predecessor Justice League, but the wider animated universe. It was because of this show that the more obscure DC characters I was unaware of suddenly came to light. And whilst it was a good education, a lot of the obscure characters I didn't particularly care for. The excellent voice acting and the excellent written storylines along with the established hero icons was the recipe that made this show a fantastic and great success. Once again, I feel it had another 2 seasons tops left to go. I guess we'll never know. So overall, Justice League Unlimited, a certified monster of a show. One of the best, if not the best, DC animated show ever.